I just got the urge to try to make a short little video explaining the screenplay that I wrote, Seeds of Anarchy. I wrote this in 2020. It was probably the first time I really spent 3 months on a screenplay like, nonstop like that, or at least on the weekends nonstop. Riding the subway to work, I would like work on it and read it every day. So I was pretty passionate about this one. It's set in the 80s. It's a bunch of punk kids who live in like a warehouse and they're in a punk band. And within the first 10 minutes of the film, not to ruin too much, the lead singer Sticks accidentally kills somebody by twirling his microphone like a maniac. And the person he happened to accidentally kill is the son of the mob boss. So now he has to escape the city with his bandmates, Lucy, the bass player, and Rico, the drummer. And they all, the 80s punk fashion. So he would have like a huge mohawk and stuff. Mohawk. So they flee the city that night and head south in their crappy van. And that's where the story kind of starts. I don't want to ruin the whole thing by giving the whole plot, but they end up in Georgia when their van like runs out of gas and they run out of money pretty quickly. I don't want to give too much away about the rest of it, but they end up working on a farm to kind of pass the time and make some money quickly. And this is pretty much the second act of the film. The family who works the farm, and there's a group of Mexican migrant workers who they work with. So it's kind of a fish out of water story at that point. 3 punks from the city learning how to farm and stuff. So it's a comedy, but there's some darker moments towards the end. Not to give too much away, but the third act, yeah, there's a whole conflict regarding the property owner, Lenny. He's about to lose his land because he can't repay some loans. So there's a bit of a marijuana angle. One of the Mexican workers, Ramon, the elder, the shaman type guy, he's been growing like fields of marijuana plants and nobody even knew about it. So they start selling the pot to save the farm. And it's kind of another fish out of water story because Lenny and his family are like clean cut Reagan conservative types who saved their land that's been around for 5 generations by selling marijuana. And this is right in the heart of the war on drugs, 1980s with Ronald Reagan, all that stuff. So there's a lot of weird angles to this story, but I don't want to give it all away. Hopefully somebody reads the script and watches this someday. And there's some spiritual undertones to the whole story about reincarnation and stuff. It's kind of hidden way down deep, but it's a part of the story about reincarnation and stuff like that. And the coolest part is just like the punk aesthetic is cool on film. Like I watch a lot of punk documentaries all the time. I love them, man. There's some great punk documentaries about the 80s and 90s. And just the aesthetic is fun to look at on TV. A bunch of punk kids going nuts. Like, I was never really a part of that scene. I love punk music, but I never went all out like into the punk scene when I was a teenager. But it's in the early 80s, so I tried to make a soundtrack as well with all like 80s punk songs, which I'm not too familiar with, but I know a little bit about 80s punk, 80s hardcore, so it was kind of an education for me. But there's really just one lead character, Sticks, but there's a lot of characters in this one. There's a whole Mexican family. There's a Lenny and his family. There's a biker gang. There's the three punks, Sticks, Lucy, and Rico. So it's a pretty big cast, actually. Maybe the most people I've ever written character-wise. There's a hitman who's hired by the mob to kill them. There's another female assassin hired. I got that backwards. There's a female assassin hired to kill them. And I always picture Angelica Houston because I don't know why. I just picture her all the time. And there's also another hitman, Bryce, who's like the 80s macho dude. And he's hired to kill her. I'm spoiling the story a little here, but, you know, I don't want to say too much more than I'm just going to stop it here before I spoil too much. And that's pretty much the whole story. The coolest part, in my opinion, is just the aesthetic, because it would look really cool on film, having some unknown punk actors, unknown actors playing punk rockers like that. And yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting story with a spiritual twist. There's a little bit of violence towards the end because, you know, it is kind of a mob movie. There's a mob element. There's some violence towards the end, some supernatural stuff towards the end. But I would say it's a dark comedy for the most part.